I pushed open my front door on a Tuesday night, ready for the usual noise. I expected to see my daughter stretched out on the couch with homework. I expected to hear my wife, Emily, calling from the kitchen about dinner. Maybe the dog would be barking at shadows again. Instead, I walked into a setup. They were all arranged in a careful half circle in the living room, like some do-it-yourself courtroom. Emily sat forward on the couch, arms firm from her yoga classes, blonde hair pulled tight in the serious bun she used when she meant business. On either side of her were our girls, Hannah at 16 and Sophie at 14, both staring at the floor. My mother, Margaret, had claimed my recliner, the chair that is supposed to be mine. And by the fireplace, leaning on the mantel as if it belonged to him, stood my older brother, Brian. Nobody said anything for a long 10 seconds. Then Sophie cleared her throat. "Dad, you should sit down," she said. Her voice wobbled, but she got the words out. "We need to talk." I stayed on my feet and set my toolbox down hard on the entryway tile. It thudded. I had just finished 12 hours of running my construction crew, chasing permits, and arguing with suppliers. A surprise family meeting was the last thing I wanted. "Talk about what?" I asked. I looked each of them in the eye. Brian was the only one who looked back. Something in his face made my stomach twist. Hannah spoke next. Her voice was steadier. "Dad, you need to accept a new reality. You are not in charge of this family anymore." That hit me like a block to the chest. My jaw tightened. My fingers curled. "Please sit down, David," Emily said. Her voice had that soft, careful tone she uses when she wants to sound kind. "We are all here because we care about you." "You care about me?" I let out a short laugh with no humor in it. "This feels like an ambush." Brian pushed off the mantel. His suit was sharp and spotless, even though it was late. He has always been the golden boy. College degree, financial advisor job, perfect credit score. The list goes on. He is everything I am not, at least according to the family story. "David, we have been talking," Brian said, smooth as a radio host. "About the kids. About Emily. About what is best for everyone." "What is best for everyone?" I repeated. "And what is that exactly?" Hannah looked at her mom and then back at me. "Uncle Brian is more like a father to us now. He helps with homework. He shows up at our games and events. He listens when we talk." Those words cut deep. I thought about the soccer matches I missed because I was on a job site. I thought about the parent-teacher nights where I showed up covered in sawdust and paint. I thought about the times I came home too tired to tackle algebra or history. "I work 60 hours a week to pay for this house," I said. "Your clothes, your phones, everything. I am sorry if that does not leave me time to be some perfect suburban father." "It is not about being perfect," Emily said, stepping in fast. "It is about being present. Brian has been more of a partner to me in the last 6 months than you have been in 6 years." Partner. The word hung in the room like smoke. Suddenly, the pieces lined up. Brian dropping by more often with some excuse to help with yard work or a small fix. Emily dressing up for even a grocery run. The way the girls had started watching me like I was a visitor in my own home. "A partner," I said quietly. "Is that what we are calling it now?" My mother finally spoke. Her tone was crisp. "David, you are being dramatic. Brian has been nothing but helpful while you bury yourself in work." "Helpful," I said, nodding slowly as something cold settled in my chest. "Right." I looked at each face again. Emily with that practiced concern. Brian with a little smirk he could not quite hide. My daughters torn and confused. My mother wearing disappointment like a badge. Their minds were made up. This was not a conversation. It was a verdict. "You know what?" I said, and I picked up my toolbox. "I am going to pass on this little meeting." "David, do not walk away," Emily called. "We need to handle this like adults." "Adults?" I stopped at the door and turned back. "If you want to handle this like adults, then next time do not stage it in the house that I pay for." I stepped outside and closed the door quietly. The evening air felt cool on my face. I stood on my own porch and felt like I did not belong there. Through the window, I could see them huddled together. I could almost hear them telling each other that I was the unreasonable one, that this proved I did not know how to communicate. I got in my truck and drove to my best friend's place. Mike Carter and I have been tight since high school. Mike Carter is the one friend who never let go of my hand. He got me through my first divorce. He backed me when I started my construction company. He showed up for 20 years of wins and losses. When he opened his door and saw my face, he did not ask for details. He stepped aside and let me in. He pulled a beer from the fridge and pressed it into my hand. What happened? He asked. I told him all of it. From the second I walked into my own living room to the second I walked back out. Mike listened without a word. With every part one added, his weathered face got tighter. So they told you Brian is the new man of the house, he said when I finished. Pretty much, I said. And Emily called him her partner. Mike went quiet. He started peeling the label off his bottle, eyes on the table. David, I was wondering when you were going to see it. See what? Your wife has been with your brother for months, he said. I thought you knew and were looking the other way. It hit hard, even though some part of me already knew the shape of it. Hearing it out loud made it real in a way that knocked the breath out of me. How long have you known? I asked. I saw them about 3 months ago at that restaurant downtown, he said. They were not hiding it. They were holding hands across the table. She laughed at everything he said. I figured you had to know. I set the bottle down. My hands shook. I did not know. I felt something was off, but I told myself she was going through a rough patch. I am sorry, man, Mike said. I should have told you sooner. No, I said, standing up. You did right. I needed to see it for myself. Near midnight, I drove back by the house. Brian's Mercedes was still in my driveway. The living room lights were on. I sat in my truck and watched shadows move behind the curtains. Something cold settled in my chest. I decided that tomorrow would not look like today. I woke up on Mike's couch with a kink in my neck and the stale taste of beer in my mouth. My phone showed 118 missed calls. Most were from Emily. Some were from my mother. A few were from the girls. I deleted the calls and did not listen to a single voicemail. Mike was already in the kitchen making coffee. You look rough, he said, handing me a mug. Feel worse? I need to know exactly what is going on in my house, I said, rubbing my temples. What do you mean? I mean I need proof. If Emily has been cheating with Brian, there will be evidence. Mike sat down across from me. His face was serious. What are you going to do with it? I do not know yet, I said. But I am not going to let them paint me as the villain while they lie and sneak around. After coffee and a shower at Mike's place, I drove to my house. Brian's car was gone. Emily's yoga studio does not open until 10 o'clock, so I figured she might still be around. I let myself in with my key and stood still, listening. The house was silent. Through the kitchen window, I saw the empty garage bay where her car should have been. That meant she had stepped out. Good. I went straight to our bedroom. I checked her nightstand first. Hand lotion, reading glasses, a stack of romance paperbacks. Nothing special. Then I opened her laptop. Jackpot. She had left her email signed in. At the top of the inbox sat a message from Brian. The subject line read, "Last night was incredible." My hands trembled as I clicked it open. Emily, I cannot stop thinking about you. The way you looked at me at dinner. The way you touched my hand when David was not looking. I know we said we would go slow, but I am falling in love with you. We cannot pretend this is only physical. Brian. I scrolled through the thread. My stomach turned with every new piece. It had been going on at least 4 months, maybe longer. The early notes sounded harmless. He offered to help with house repairs. She thanked him for being so supportive during what she called a hard season in my marriage. By the second week, they were meeting for coffee. By the third week, coffee became lunch. By the fourth week, lunch became afternoons at Brian's condo while I was on job sites and the girls were at school. The latest messages were explicit enough to make me sick. They described what they had done in my bed, in my shower, on my couch. They set dates for the next time. They traded ideas for how to manage the David problem. 2 weeks ago, there was a message from Emily that stopped me cold. She wrote, "I think it is time we tell him. The girls already see you more as a father figure than they see David. And Brian, you are everything he is not. Sophisticated, successful, emotionally available. David is never going to change. He is a blue-collar man who thinks working with his hands is enough to keep a family together." Brian's reply was worse. "You are right, but we have to be smart. David has a temper, and he is physically stronger than both of us. We need the girls and your mother-in-law on our side first. Once they are convinced I am the better choice for this family, David will have no choice but to accept it." I printed every single email. The pages slid out in a neat stack while my hands shook with rage. I checked her phone next. She had left it charging on the kitchen counter. Same story. There were text messages, photos, and even a few short videos that made me want to drive my fist through the drywall. The photos were the worst. There was Brian in my kitchen wearing my apron while he cooked dinner for my family. There was Brian at my table helping Hannah with homework. There were shots of him and Emily together at the girls' school events. Those were the nights I stayed late on job sites and asked my brother to stand in for me, thinking he was doing us a favor. There was even a selfie of the two of them in my bed, both of them without clothes, smiling into the camera. The timestamp said it was taken last Tuesday afternoon while I was putting out a fire at a project. I forwarded everything to my own email account and cleared the sent folder from her phone. I wanted her to wonder how I learned the truth. When I heard her car pull into the driveway, I was already at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee and a stack of printed emails. She came in from the garage with her yoga mat over her shoulder. She looked relaxed and happy until she saw me. "David," she said, using that careful, flat voice. "I thought you were staying at Mike's." "Change of plans," I said, nodding at the chair across from me. "Have a seat, Emily. We need to talk." She stayed on her feet. Her eyes dropped to the papers. "What are those?" "Your love notes," I said, steady and calm. "Months of emails and texts between you and my brother. Very detailed. Very heartfelt." The color left her face. She did not deny it. She set her yoga mat down and crossed her arms. "How did you get into my email?" "You left your laptop signed in," I said. Sloppy for someone who thinks she is running a secret affair. She lowered herself into the chair. The cool yoga teacher act started to slip. "David, I can explain." "Explain what?" I asked. "Explain how you have been sleeping with my brother in our bed? Explain how you have been turning my daughters against me? Explain how you and Brian have been scheming to ease me out of my own family?" "It is not like that." I picked up one printout and read a piece aloud. "Brian, I cannot wait until we do not have to hide. David is clueless. He even thanked you last week for being such a good brother. If he only knew his good brother has me climaxing 3 times a day in the bed David pays for." Emily flinched like I had slapped her. "Please," she said. "Please what?" I asked. "Please pretend I did not see it. Please go along while you crown Brian the head of my house." I leaned in and lowered my voice. "Tell me, Emily, was last night's little circle in the living room your idea or his?" She did not answer. The guilt on her face said enough. "Here is what happens next," I said, standing and gathering the pages. "You are going to call Brian and tell him I know everything. You are going to tell the girls that their perfect Uncle Brian has been lying to them. And you are going to start looking for a new place to live." "David, you cannot throw me out," she said. "This is my home too." "Is it?" I asked. "Because according to these messages, you have already been planning to leave me for Brian. Something about his condo being so much nicer than our tacky suburban house." Tears ran ink black down her cheeks. "I never meant for it to happen like this. Brian and I just connected. You have been so distant." "Do not," I said, raising a hand. "Do not try to dump your choices on me. You chose this. You chose to betray your husband with his brother. You chose to turn my kids against me. You chose to plan my humiliation in my own living room." I walked to the door and looked back. "One more thing, Emily. You might want to change your passwords. You never know who could be reading your email." I left her at the table crying into her hands and drove back to Mike's. I had work to do. For the next week, I kept my head down. I put in full days on the job. I came home for dinner. I helped with homework when Hannah or Sophie would let me. I was polite to Emily. I was civil to Brian when he showed up. I was respectful to my mother. Inside, I was running a plan. Phase 1 was information. I put a global positioning system tracker on Brian's Mercedes, the kind contractors use to keep tabs on company trucks. I mounted a camera in the garage with a clean view of the driveway. I watched routines. I wrote down schedules. I looked for patterns. What I found made my blood run hot. Brian was coming to my house almost every day while I was at work. He would roll in around noon, stay 2 or 3 hours, and leave before the girls got home. On Wednesdays, when Emily's studio was closed, they spent the whole afternoon together. It was not only the affair that burned me. It was the way he moved in like he owned the place. The tracker showed him stopping at the grocery store on the way over, buying food off my family's list. The camera caught him mowing my lawn, washing my wife's car, and shooting baskets with my daughters in the driveway. He was taking my place piece by piece. The breaking point landed on a Friday afternoon. I had left work early to pick up supplies for a weekend job, and I swung by the house to grab my good measuring tape. Brian's car sat in the driveway. Through the living room window, I saw him on the couch with Emily. They were not only being intimate. They were curled together, talking and laughing like a real couple. Like they belonged. Like I was the outsider. I sat in my truck for 10 long minutes and watched them. Something cold and solid took shape in my chest. Then I drove to Emily's yoga studio. Monica and Jasmine, her closest friends and business partners, were setting up for the evening classes. I had known them for years. They came to our barbecues. They sang at the girls' birthday parties. They smiled across holiday dinners. They always treated me like part of their yoga family circle. "David," Monica said with a bright voice when I walked in. "What brings you here?" "Emily is not here today." "I know where Emily is," I said, quiet and steady. "She is at my house with my brother." Monica's smile fell away. Jasmine stopped lining up yoga blocks and stared. "What do you mean?" Jasmine asked. I took out my phone and held up a photo I had found. Brian and Emily were kissing in my kitchen. The timestamp said it was taken 3 days ago. "I mean, my wife has been with my brother for 4 months," I said. "And it seems like everyone knew but me." Monica's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, David. We had no idea, did we?" "Did you not?" I asked. "Because in the emails I found, Emily tells Brian about her talks with you too. How you told her to follow her heart and not settle for a marriage that does not fulfill her." They glanced at each other, and I could see the guilt move across their faces. "David, we never told her to have an affair," Jasmine said, voice small. "Maybe not in those exact words," I said. "But you knew she was unhappy, and instead of saying, 'Get counseling,' or 'Talk honestly to your husband,' you told her she deserved better. You helped her excuse what she was doing." "That is not fair," Monica said. "We are her friends. We were trying to be supportive." "Supportive of what?" I asked. "Adultery. Betrayal. Taking apart a family piece by piece." I put my phone away and looked around at the posters about inner peace, the crystals and candles, the warm lighting and soft music. The whole place preached mindfulness and truth. "Here is what is funny," I said. "All this talk about living authentically, and not one of you had the courage to tell me my wife was with my own brother." "David, please," Monica said. "Do not do anything you will regret." "Regret?" I let out a short laugh. "The only thing I regret is trusting people who smiled at me while they helped pull my life apart behind my back." I started for the door, then stopped. "One more thing, ladies. You might want to think about a new partner. When this comes out, and it will, people in this town will think twice before paying for classes run by someone who helps married women cheat on their husbands." That evening I came home to find another meeting underway. Mike was there this time, perched on the edge of the couch, looking like he wished he were anywhere else. Emily, Brian, my mother, and the girls sat in their usual half-circle. "David," Emily said as I stepped inside, "we need to talk about your behavior today." "My behavior?" I said. "Monica called me," she said. "You went to the studio and made some very serious accusations." I looked around the room. Mike gave me a sorry look. He had been dragged into this the way I had been dragged into the last one. Brian looked calm and pleased with himself. My mother looked disappointed. The girls looked upset and lost. "Accusations," I said, keeping my voice level. "Is that what we are calling the truth now?" "David, please," my mother said. "There is no need for drama." "Drama?" I took out my phone and brought up one of the videos from Emily's device. "Mother, would you like to see real drama? Here is your golden child, Brian, being intimate with my wife in my bed." "David," Emily yelled, lunging for the phone. I held it up out of reach. "What is wrong, Emily? Not proud of your filming skills?" Brian jumped to his feet, face burning. "That is enough, David. You are out of line." "Out of line?" I said, a short laugh leaving my mouth. "You have been sleeping with my wife for 4 months, coaching my kids to see you as their father, and planning to take over my family, and I am the one out of line." "Dad, stop," Sophie cried, tears running down her face. "Please just stop." "Stop what, honey?" I asked, softer to her than to anyone else. "Stop telling the truth? Stop standing up for myself? Stop fighting for this family?" "This is why we needed an intervention," Emily said, her voice shaking. "Look at how you are acting, David. You are scaring the girls." "I am scaring them," I said. "What about Uncle Brian, who has lied to them for months? What about their mother, who has been betraying their father? What about their grandmother, who knew about the affair and said nothing?" My mother went pale. "David, I never." "You never what, mother?" I said. "Never knew?" Mike put the pieces together in one afternoon. You have been coming here twice a week for 4 months, and you never noticed that Brian's car was parked out front a whole lot? I looked at my mother and felt something inside me go flat. You never wondered why Emily was suddenly so happy, I said. You never asked why the girls started talking about Brian like he was their real father. The room went quiet. The only sound was Sophie crying under her breath. Here is what happens next, I said, slow and steady. Brian, you are going to get out of my house, and you are going to stay out. Emily, you are going to tell the girls the truth about what you have been doing. Mother, you are going to choose whether you want a relationship with your son or with your son's cheating partner. You do not get both. You cannot hand out ultimatums, Brian said. Watch me, I said. I turned to Mike. Sorry they pulled you into this. Want to grab a beer? Mike stood up right away. Yes, let us go. We were almost out the door when Emily called after me. David, if you walk out, do not bother coming back. I stopped and turned. Emily, I built this house with my own hands, I said. I paid for every chair, every appliance, and every strip of sod in the yard. If you want me out, you will need more than an affair and a staged intervention. Mike and I went to the Anchor, the dive bar where the contractors gather after work. Within an hour, the story was moving through the room. By morning, most of town would have heard that Emily Carter was sleeping with her brother-in-law. The next 2 weeks blurred. Lawyers, accusations, small-town gossip that grew a new edge every time it was repeated. Emily filed for divorce. She said I was emotionally harmful and mentally unstable. I countered with evidence of adultery. I asked for full custody of Hannah and Sophie. Brian tried to play peacemaker. He suggested counseling and mediation. I told him exactly what he could do with his suggestions. My mother chose a side, not mine. She moved in with Brian to help the family heal. What she really did was give their relationship cover. It made the affair look respectable. The girls were stuck in the middle. Hannah said I was tearing the family apart. Sophie cried and asked why everyone was angry all the time. Then I found the money problem. I was going through bank statements for the divorce and saw things that did not add up. Cash missing. Transfers I did not remember. Credit cards I had never applied for. I spent 3 long days tracking it down. When the pieces finally came together, I had the whole ugly picture. Brian used his financial advisor credentials, and Emily forged my signature. They had been draining our accounts and opening loans in my name. In 4 months, they took almost $50,000. That was college money for the girls. That was cash I had set aside for home projects. That was our future. They burned it on their affair. Fancy hotels, weekend trips, jewelry I assumed Emily had bought with her own money. When I showed the records, Brian actually called it a loan. We were in my lawyer's office when he said it, sitting there like he was doing me a favor. I was helping Emily become financially independent, he said. She needed her own money for when you two separated. You mean when you talked her into leaving me for you? I said. David, your marriage was already over, he said. Emily was miserable. I helped her see her options. Options like stealing from me and forging my name, I said. It is not theft if it is marital property, he said. I looked at my attorney, Miss Brandt. She is a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who lives for cases like this. She gave me the smallest nod. We had them on financial fraud. But Brian could not leave it alone. Let us be honest about why you are angry, he said. You are mad because Emily chose someone better. Someone who can support her emotionally and financially. Financially, I laughed. Brian, you make about $60,000 a year as a financial advisor. My construction company cleared $200,000 last year. The only way you can provide is by using my bank accounts. I make more than that, he said. No, you do not. I slid a folder across the table. I hired a private investigator. You are broke. You have $40,000 in credit card debt. Your condo is 3 months behind. And your car is about to be repossessed, I said. That is why you needed my money, right? You were trying to impress Emily with a lifestyle you could not afford. Brian's face went red, then pale. Emily stared at him, stunned. That is not. I mean, I had some temporary cash flow issues, but nothing. I cut in. You are a fraud, Brian. You have lived beyond your means for years, and when you saw a chance to steal from your own brother to bankroll your affair, you took it. They stormed out, but the damage was done. Within days, my attorney filed the fraud evidence with the court, and criminal charges started moving. I was not finished. The next phase took patience and timing. I waited for Founders Day weekend, when the whole town gathers in the square for food, music, and small talk. Brian had volunteered to give a talk on family financial planning. The irony was not subtle, given his mess and the pending charges. He was set to speak at 2 o'clock, right after the mayor's welcome. I showed up early and set a small table near the main stage. I laid out neat folders with clear labels, evidence of adultery, financial fraud documentation, timeline of betrayal. Inside were printed emails between Brian and Emily, bank records showing the missing funds, and photographs of the two of them in my house. At exactly 2 o'clock, Brian stepped to the microphone to begin his presentation on building financial trust in your family. I stood. Before Brian talks about financial trust, I called out, loud and even. Maybe he should explain why he has been stealing from his own brother to fund an affair with his brother's wife. The crowd went silent. Brian froze at the microphone, color draining from his face. "David, please," he said into the mic, "this is not the time or the place." "Is it not?" I walked toward the stage, holding up a printed email. "This is a public forum about financial trust. You are a financial advisor who has been committing fraud. Seems like exactly the right time and place." People drifted closer as word of drama spread. I faced them and raised my voice. "My name is David Carter. Some of you know me. I own Carter Construction. I have lived here 15 years. I built about half the homes on Elm Street. What you might not know is that my brother Brian and my wife Emily have been together for 4 months." Gasps and murmurs moved through the square. I saw Emily pushing through the crowd toward the stage, her face bright red. "But that is not the worst part," I said. "The worst part is that Brian, who you are about to trust with advice about your family's money, has been siphoning cash from my accounts to pay for hotels and jewelry for his mistress." "David, stop," Emily said as she reached the front and tried to climb onto the stage. "Stop what, Emily? Stop telling the truth?" I held up a bank statement. $50,000 taken in 4 months. Forged signatures. Unauthorized loans. Credit cards opened in my name. All to fund their secret. Brian had backed away from the microphone. The mayor hustled in from the side, clearly ready to shut me down. I had maybe half a minute left. "Here is the point," I said, letting my voice carry. "If a man will steal from his family, lie to his brother, and betray the people who trust him most, you should not trust him with your retirement savings." The mayor reached me as the last words left my mouth. The crowd had already heard enough. The damage was done. Brian's name was mud in town. Emily stood there sobbing, red-faced with shame. Half the crowd already had their phones out, calling friends and family with the story. As security walked me away from the stage, I spotted my daughters. Hannah looked horrified. Sophie was staring at her mother and her uncle with something like understanding finally waking up in her eyes. That night, Brian left town. He packed up his condo and drove off without telling anyone where he was headed. The charges would follow him wherever he went, but at least he was out of my life. Emily held on for about a week. The pressure of being the town outcast cracked her. She moved back to her mother's place in Ohio and left the girls with me. My mother came by a few days later. She looked older and more tired than I had ever seen her. "I owe you an apology," she said, standing stiff in my living room. "Yes, you do," I said. I thought if Brian and Emily were happy together, and if the girls were happy, then maybe it would all work itself out. I did not understand about the money. I did not see how much they were steering everything. "Mom, they lied to everyone, including you," I said. "Brian has been broke for years. Emily had been planning to leave me long before the affair started. They used you the same way they used me." She nodded, eyes wet. "Can you forgive me?" I really looked at her then. I saw a lonely woman, fooled by a smooth-talking son and a manipulative daughter-in-law. She chose badly, but she was a victim in her own way, too. "Yes, Mom, I can forgive you," I said. "But it will take time to trust you again." "I understand," she said. She left, and it was just me and my daughters in the house. They were finally starting to see what had really been going on. It took months of family counseling, straight talk, and patience, but we began to mend. Hannah apologized for taking sides without all the facts. Sophie stopped crying all the time and started telling me about school, her friends, and what she dreams about for the future. The divorce was final 6 months later. I kept the house. I got full custody of Hannah and Sophie. The court ordered Emily to pay restitution for the stolen money, though I doubted I would ever see much of it. Brian never came back. Through people we both knew, I heard he declared bankruptcy and got a job at a car dealership in Florida. The criminal case was dropped in exchange for full restitution, but his life as a financial advisor was finished. Emily tried to stay in touch with the girls with phone calls and occasional visits, but it was strained. They had lost respect for her. Trust is hard to rebuild once it breaks. As for me, I learned to be both mother and father. I learned to help with homework, to show up for school nights, and to listen when they needed to talk. I learned that being present matters more than being perfect, and that love without honesty is only a trick. The family audit was complete. Some ties were gone for good. The ones that remained were stronger and more real than they had ever been. Sometimes that is the best you can hope for.